All right, my question to you is aimed at Trump's pro-life perspective on the abortion issue, and that is, why do you believe in pro-life policies and like the pro-life movement, but only up until the point of birth? Why does pro-life not continue to extend past birth into the child's life and supporting free school lunches and extended maternal leave and adding to SNAP benefits to help reduce the number of children in poverty? And why do you support pro-life only until the child is born?
See, that is a great question because all these conservatives really want to like force women to have children, but don't give a shit about what happens to those children after they're born. Okay. And they talk a big game, especially Charlie Kirk, about how much he cares about the family and how much he wants to support families and support family formation and stability, yada yada, but does not want any government assistance to be a part of that solution, even though it's something that obviously works.
Everything we support is pro-life. That's why we want more police on the streets so that crime goes down. We also want a border to make sure that when that kid grows up, they're actually part of a country.
Yeah, I remember crime going down in the 1980s and 90s when there were, gang shootouts with the police. There were more police. Why didn't crime just go down all of a sudden? Oh, because there was a deeper systemic issue.
We want tax cuts so that those families can actually feed their kids. To those elements, though, I think there's something disturbing.
He wants tax cuts, and that's going to help families feed their children. What? Which families? I mean, the tax cuts, might give you an extra $2,000 a year, if you're the average, family. But that's not going to be enough to feed your child for a whole year. Or children for a whole year.
When we look to the government to feed our kids. Now, in necessary in times that, to feed kids, we should step in. But is government really the first step to try to make sure a kid has a meal?
But is that not,
and just
about verbatim quotes from those from that Bible and Jesus that you're always talking about?
Yes, well, hold on.
Feed the hungry and clothe the poor and support everybody.
That's a third and fourth important point.
Yeah.
That's where I believe Christian charities and churches should step up and feed and to clothe and to be a helping hand, not government.
Newsflash, Charlie. Christian charities and other religious charities already exist. They already exist, and yet we still have, people who are food insecure. People who are, malnourished, even though we have plenty of resources, plenty of food, right, to feed these people, you want to cut back on those programs. You want to cut back on food stamps. Even though food stamps, keeps, children from being malnourished, from being in abject poverty. These are good programs. Whether these government programs should be the first, second, or third thing doesn't fucking matter. Do they work? Do they give us the results that we want? Capitalism is not giving us the results we want. Obviously, if there are people who are malnourished, right, regardless of why they're food insecure or malnourished, from poor decisions, or they get laid off, or they become homeless for XYZ reason. Doesn't matter. That's happening under capitalism. And the government has to come in and, backstop all of the problems that capitalism creates.
In fact, we used to be a country that we had a lot more private charities going and helping people in need. In fact, I would make a contention.
Okay, where's the proof for that? We're probably at the peak number of charities in this country.
If the government cut all of its social welfare, every church would step up to make sure that no kid went hungry in this country and that no kid would die of starvation. We are a very generous people. And what we have found in Europe, when the government grows to such an extent, private charity basically goes under. Also, I do want to make sure it's clear. Child starvation is not an issue in this country. 5 to 10% of kids experience what they call food insecurity. Mm-hmm. That's like a very opaque term, but 50% of our children are obese.
Is food insecurity an opaque term? Let's see if we can do a quick little Google. Food insecurity definition. What does that mean? The condition of not having access to sufficient food or food of an adequate quality to meet one's basic needs. Quality. He's going to mention the obesity rate. That's because we have shitty food.
Obese or overweight.
Yeah.
We do not have a child starvation issue. We have a child obesity problem. We're feeding our kids too much of the bad food, not too little of food that they need.
Yeah.
Finally, so
Although
every
those two issues do go hand in hand because lower income families are not.
Also, let's see. Is childhood starvation in the United States? Okay, that's just talking about food insecurity, which is still a problem. Let's not pretend that food insecurity is not that big a deal. 9 million children are struggling with hunger. I guess that doesn't matter because it's not that many. In percentage terms, it's not that bad. I mean, this says 1 in 5 American kids doesn't have enough food. More than 47 million people in the U.S. face hunger. Sounds kind of bad. Anyway.
Not able to afford.
See, that's actually not true.
Higher nutrition or the more nutritious, healthier foods that
they make a conscious choice to buy bad stuff. Study out.
Hold on.
able to afford hand in hand because lower income families are not able to afford.
See, that's actually not true.
Higher nutrition or the more nutritious, healthier foods that
they make a conscious choice to buy bad stuff. Study after study shows
that bad stuff is cheaper and they can get more food that way. They can't afford to eat fancy local organic Caesar salads from Whole Foods. They can afford to eat a sandwich off the dollar menu because they only have like $2.
You're right. So again, study after study shows that that's actually not true. That lower income families actually prefer the worst food, and they've actually grown largely addicted to it. They become very glucose dependent. But anyway, to answer your question, we as
Okay, sure. Like, I don't fully disagree with that. Yeah, the food in our country that poor people can afford is cheap and addictive. What do you want to do about that, Charlie? What free market solution is going to magically, change that?
pro-lifers, every public policy position we hold is pro-life. I'll give you another example. We want to end the Russian-Ukrainian war so that the sons and daughters of this nation don't get drafted into World War III against Russia. So everything we believe is through a pro-life prism.
Okay. In that case,
Little
to
Freudian
that
slip
end,
there.
I mean, it's not so much of an opinion, but there are people in this country who do die every winter, die of exposure because they are homeless and shelters don't have enough room or capacity and they haven't anywhere warm to sleep and they die of exposure. So with that in mind, would you support increased funding for homeless shelters in the country?
No. Homeless shelters are not the issue. When homeless die on the streets of Chicago, it's because they do not want to go inside. They're told repeatedly by police and other organizations. There are churches that will put them in, gymnasiums that will put them in, but they
Look, yes, obviously, yes, that is true. Okay. A lot of homeless people, don't want to go into shelters that have, really strict rules. A lot of them are addicted to drugs. I don't know exactly what the solution to that is. Okay. But clearly, Charlie wants to do nothing about homelessness other than let's teach everyone to be just more responsible. That's our solution to everything, is just to change the culture, man. Yeah, what about people who get laid off, Charlie? What does culture have to do with that? I'm pro-life, but I don't want to help the homeless people. And yes, homelessness is a very complex issue that once someone is living on the streets, it's very difficult to get them back on their feet and reintegrate them into society. That is true, but that doesn't mean we can't do nothing about it. I'm not an expert on that, but you know, I wouldn't just throw my hands up and say, let's just forget them, fuck them. Obviously, we need to do, you know, more to prevent people from ending up on the streets to begin with. And that includes affordable housing, affordable government housing, you know, universal daycare, guaranteed jobs programs, universal, you know, health insurance. These are things that other countries have done. This isn't radical, right? Of course, I would like to go further, but like we could start somewhere and vastly improve society. But Charlie doesn't want those things. He talks a big game about wanting to help, you know, the poor and downtrodden, and you know he's pro-life, except you know, except every stage after birth. He doesn't give a fuck what happens to you. Unless you succeed in the marketplace, then you're fucking cool. You're the coolest guy. But anyway, look, that's it for me, guys. You know what time it is. It's nap time. Go ahead and do all those things that YouTubers tell you to do. You know which ones. Don't play coy with me. All right. Talk to you later. Bye bye.